Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for joining here on this morning, Saturday. Today is the first class of Selenium. This class is being recorded. Let me introduce Deepinder to all of you guys. After that, I will hand over the session to Deepinder. This is the running notes. You will be receiving the running notes, recorded video, material after the class every day. No need to write anything, whatever is explained in the class. If you have any questions any day, please contact at these 4 numbers. All US residents, please call to USA number, and Canadians call to this number, and email address you are already aware. And best mode of communication is email or phone or voice messages. Least preferred mode of communication is WhatsApp. Please avoid WhatsApp or SMS or text messages. If you want the quick reply, please email me or phone or voice messages. Okay, and let me to explain you a few more small conditions. Selenium class will be started at 11 means 11 sharp class will be started. Please make sure that you are able to hear the audio over your headset. In case if you are not able to hear anytime, please dial to conference number given here. If you are not able to join in the class due to any reason, please call the customer support number. This is the customer support number. I will send this notes to all of you guys after the class. As I said, no need to write anything. If you are disconnected from the meeting due to any reason, please use the same link to rejoin in the class. Okay. It is observed that a couple of you guys are attending the classes using your cell phone. Please avoid to attend the class from your cell phone. Instead of attending the class over cell phone, if you are able to connect your laptop to a big TV, it is easy to understand the code. You cannot be able to understand the code if you attend through your cell phone. Even if there is a big disturbance in your home, if you are able to connect to your big TV and home theater, it is easy to understand. Okay. Please never attend through cell phone. This is a group class for almost 10 people here. And we also provide one-on-one training also based on your desired date and time. We also provide you frequently asked questions, lab setup help to practice on your computer. Either me or Deepinder can help you to set up lab on our home computer. If you face any issues, let me know. We will be able to remotely log into our computer and fix the issues. I will also help you with the resume preparation, mock interviews, placement assistance. I can get you the interview calls for you, but I will not give any job guarantee to anyone. Definitely, if you follow instructions and if your skill set is matching to job requirement, it is possible to get the interview call. Okay, every day you will be receiving the recorded videos. You can repeat the course free of cost again, and programs also will be shared in the whatever is explained in the class. Every day, please check your spam folder for running notes, material, and recorded video. If you didn't receive the email, please send me a reminder email so that I can send you all the recorded video, running notes, and material. Okay, every day we will be receiving recorded video, programs, running notes, material, and installation documents, if any. Okay, please enter your name and email address while you join in the meeting. In case first time only you have to enter. No need to enter your name and email address every day. If you want to receive the notes, videos, and material, please type your email address in chat box or send email to info@getsoftwareservices.com. I will wait 1 minute. In case if you need the running notes material, please send me your email address now. I will wait for a moment. You can send me the private messages or to all the audience. It's not a problem. Okay, thank you, Navjot, Nigel, for giving the email addresses. If you did not give the email address, you will not receive the running notes, video, and material. Okay. So other trainings are whatever we offer is that QA, manual testing and mobile testing, agile testing, Cucumber, RPM, BDD, Gherkins, Jira, SoapUI. Few people are asking for Selenium with Python. That is also started recently. Python and Selenium. Now currently we are going for Java and Selenium. Right? Java based Selenium, Python based Selenium is started. If anybody is interested, we can provide you one-on-one classes or group classes for Python with Selenium also. QTP and UFT, another course. If you do all those things, you are eligible to work as a SDET. That means Software Developed Engineering Test. It is not just test engineer, Software Developed Engineering Test. That means you should be aware of the coding if you wanted to work as SDET job title. Okay, we will help you with the job search, Java, QTP, Selenium, SoapUI, RPM, Cucumber. If you have all those skill sets in your resume, it is easy to get the job. If you have more skills, more chances are there to get the job. If you just have manual testing, it is very difficult to get the job. That means you should be a ninja tester. You should be able to do anything in software testing. Okay, let us see the course content. We will explain you core Java, first program in Java. We will explain you how to write simple class and method. Our goal is that not to learn Java. Java learning is not the objective of this class. Please note again, Java learning is not the objective of this class. This class objective is that learn Selenium based on Java. Okay, however, the basic stuff will be explained in the core Java. In the real time in the companies, on the fly, if required, you can learn more Java. Minimum stuff will be explained here in the class. This is, Java is vast, it's a big ocean. It's impossible to learn everything here in this class. Okay, if you are interested, you can learn on your own, or separately, we can conduct 4 Java classes for you. But whatever is explained in the class, those are sufficient to complete the course. We also give you Selenium IDE, record and playback, how to do, WebDriver, TestNG, Jenkins, Git, framework, page object model, Maven framework. These are all explained in the class. We have classes on Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time. We will be finishing the course in 5 weeks time. Okay. And it is not possible to understand everything in the class itself. It's not like manual testing. Manual testing, it is possible to understand a lot of stuff in the class itself. Automation is a little bit of different. It is very, very difficult to understand 100% in the class. You may feel that, hey, I'm not able to understand. It's flying from my head. If you feel that, don't worry. That is the expected behavior. Expected behavior is that first timers may not understand everything in the class itself. You need to repeat the course or repeat the recorded videos. That is the reason we are giving the recorded videos. Play back the recorded videos again and again. Practice whatever is explained in the recorded videos. Okay, so that's why apply 3P3R technique. What is the 3P3R? Play the video for 5 minutes. I will be giving you the recorded video every day. So play the recorded video for 5 minutes. Pause the video. Practice whatever is explained in the video. And write your own notes. And repeat. 3 times if you repeat it, then only it is possible to understand basic stuff. You will not be the expert, but just minimum things you can be able to understand. So that's why 1, 2, 3, 3 P's and 3 R's. 1, 2, 3, 3 R's. If you follow, it is easy to understand. If you are not able to understand, don't worry. You can call me for one-on-one meeting. Hey Madhu, I did not understand this. I can explain you separately in one-on-one basis, or Deependra can help you after the class. Please don't ask, could you repeat again? In the class, please don't ask. Could you repeat it again? No need to repeat. The reason is that you have recorded video. However, if you need any additional explanation, after the class, I will set up one-on-one meeting. instead of asking for repeat, please, I can set up one-on-one meeting after class. In group class, this is a group class, right? So no need to ask. Okay, if you play the recorded video, repetition is not required. That's what my gut feeling. Because we delivered classes for hundreds of the people in many batches. So no need to ask me to, hey, repeat, Deepinder, I did not understand. Please repeat. So don't do that. It's a waste of time. It's a blocking schedule. If you have 2-hour schedule, means try to extract as maximum as possible from the trainer. Okay, same thing repeat, 10 times for all the 10 people means we can't move further. Okay, so because you are not able to understand, don't give up. If you give up, you can never understand, you can never learn automation. If no automation, no job. All of you are aware. If you give up, end of the story. You can never be able to enter into field, IT field. You ask for one-on-one meeting if you face any problem. If you install the TeamViewer software, we can remotely log into your computer and fix the issues. So that is up to you how you want to learn. It is not based on us to get into the field. Your interest is required. If you practice well, definitely you can be able to land into job. Okay, Selenium is a functional regression testing tool. All of you are aware. So let me hand over the session to Deepinder after his brief introduction. Deepinder is an electronics and communication engineer from Punjab University. Just like you, just like all of you, he is also from non-IT background. Never studied computer-related courses in university or college. I also did not study it. Of course, almost all of the people in the class are from non-IT background. That means, yes, we can do it. Even from you are from non-IT background, it is possible to do this course. You can perform well as a QA analyst, okay, software automation engineer. Deepinder did a quality analyst certification. He's a certified software engineer and ACN Foundation certification he's holding, and AT application tester from MIT University. He has more than 7 years experience in software testing and automation. He has experience in healthcare domain, human resources, and telecom. In the last 4 years, he conducted more than 110 batches for individuals and corporates. His overall teaching experience is 4 years, and software testing experience is 7 years. He's an excellent trainer. If you have any questions, please ask in class or after the class. I will set up one-on-one meeting. Again, request again is that please don't ask to repeat. Okay, guys. Any questions? Okay, great. If you have any questions, you can call me anytime. Anytime I am available to discuss with you. Let me to hand over session to Deepinder. Deepinder, could you take over the session?
Unmuted.
Sure, Madhu. Thank you so much for the introduction. Okay, guys. So my name is Deepinder Singh, and I'm going to be the trainer for your Selenium Web Automation testing sessions. Before we proceed with anything, before I start speaking anything, just let me make sure that you guys can hear me properly and you can see my screen. If you can see my screen, if you can hear me properly, please type in yes in the chat box. So that is how I'll be getting to know that you are able to see and listen properly. Okay, cool. Thanks for the confirmation, guys. So now let us begin with our discussion. Madhu has introduced me to you guys, so you know about me. So basic rules have been told to you, that these are the rules we're going to follow in all the sessions. So let us start with this session from this slide. Today we're going to discuss the basics about Selenium. We're going to talk about some theoretical concepts. So today's session is going to be dedicated to theoretical Selenium, knowing Selenium, what Selenium is and all that stuff. From tomorrow, we'll start with the practical stuff. Okay. Among all other rules, one of the rules is that by default, all of you have been kept in muted mode at any point of time. If you want to ask any question, you can ask any question. You're most welcome by typing it in your chat box. Or if you feel like your question is a big one, you can unmute your mic also. But there is just one thing that we have kept it for you in the muted mode. So just to avoid any background noises, because we are recording all these sessions, and just to avoid any background noises, you have been muted. Right. So with that, we are ready to start with our discussion. We have one question. Guys, and one more thing, I may mispronounce your name. I apologize in advance. So just in case I mispronounce your name, you can just correct me that Dipinder, this is not how I pronounce my name. The correct pronunciation is this. So there's one question here by Sayanthani. Can I ask one quick question? Sure, Sayanthani. Should I unmute you? Do you want me to unmute you? All right. Okay. So you can type in your question in the chat box. I'll take that. Just go ahead. Any other question, guys? Before we start with our discussion, if you have any question before we begin, anything, if you want to ask, before we start, you can ask. Okay. So meanwhile, we get the question. Right. So let us start with our discussion. Once I get the question, I'll discuss that question as well. Okay. So we're going to start with the Selenium web automation testing. Okay, so we got the question. Let us read that question. The question is, I had one interview where the interviewer told me and gave me question paper of coding of Java while I went for QA. Okay. You can unmute your mic, Anthony, I guess if you it'll take time for you to type in. You can just unmute, doesn't matter. I'll just unmute you.
Hi there. Hi, all everybody.
Yep.
Hi, Deep. I'm sorry. I can call you Deep
Sure.
because your name is a little bit long.
Sure.
So sorry about that. Yeah, my question is, I have already, I used to work in India though in IBM, and
Okay.
then I have a computer science background also, but when I came as a visitor, and then however I'm looking for job
Hmm.
because I got my PR, and also
Hmm.
that's a different issue. But when I went for an interview, it was not a big company, but I went for a QA with QTP, that I put it in my resume that I
Okay.
knew QTP and I know VB scripting, because I
Hmm.
knew that if you know Java, you don't need that much. But when I went there as a QA, they
Hmm.
asked me first questions about macros and all everything. And the that part was good, but when they gave me one question paper, when I had to write a coding, like I studied, but I'm not right now because
Hmm.
I'm trying to get a QA job.
Right.
I knew that it's not that mandatory. You have to know, if you have to know what Java and advanced Java is, but you don't have to write that much code.
Yep.
But they gave me actual to write codes, and then there were some codes you have to write the in output. So I
Hmm.
was a little bit confused about those kind of interviews, because I know Selenium, Java, we are trying to like you are trying to teach us,
Hmm.
but is it necessary to we have to know, or we have, when we go for interview, have to know hell out of Java?
Okay, so let us just take this question itself. That's a genuine question which everyone has. As you have appeared for the interview, it's a nice thing that you have set the ground for other people as well. So that is the kind of thing they can be expecting. Now, let me tell you what is the scenario going to be. So let us just start with that, the interview part. When you go for an interview, be it a face-to-face interview or is it a telephonic interview, so it'll be divided into two parts generally. That is how it is. The first part is the Java interview, and the second part is Selenium. So generally, they will ask you, how do you want to start? Do you want to start with Java questions, or do you want to start with Selenium questions? You say, let's say, I want to start with Java questions. Now in Java, they will start asking you the Java questions. Now, how much do I need to know about Java? Java is actually divided into two parts. One is called as core Java, and one is called as advanced Java. Okay. For Selenium, we just require the core Java. We don't require advanced Java. I'll tell you what is contained in core Java and what is not to be studied, what is to be studied. But for Selenium, you just need to work with core Java because that is what we will be using in Selenium. Selenium does not use advanced Java. Okay. So one thing is you just need to focus on the core Java. Now, what do I need to focus on core Java? In core Java, there are a couple of topics, some 5-10 topics are there which you must know. And there are 3-4 topics from where they can ask you definitely a coding question. Okay, for example, they can ask you a question from arrays. They can say, okay, how will you reverse a string? For example, that is a favorite question which is asked in the interviews. How do you reverse a string? Whatever interview question you're going to get, it is going to be some logic based question which is not going to be more than 6 to 7 lines of code. In the interview, no one is going to ask you to write a 50 line of code. No one. You will be asked to write a question which is just going to be 6 to 7 lines or at max 10 lines question, where you just have to show them the logic which you're going to use. And those topics are fixed. Okay, so you can just say kind of that is the question you can expect they're going to ask. Okay, we'll talk about them also, that what are the questions which you can expect. So it is first of all not a dark room where you don't know where you have to go. Of course, there is a well-defined set path which you have to follow. There, from that path only, you will be expecting the questions. Right. So if you are appearing for the interview for the first time and you haven't gone through the interview process and you don't know what they can ask, you will of course feel like I'm moving in a dark room where I don't know in which direction the door is. Okay. But if you know in which direction the door is, at what number of steps I need to move in the north direction and I'll get the door, definitely you'll be able to get the door. So the questions which are going to be asked, there is a set pattern which they're going to ask. They're not going to ask the questions outside that questionnaire. So just prepare with the 10 topics which I'll be telling you to appear for the interview. Okay, so when we're going to start working with, let me just tell you one more thing here. For Selenium, of course, as I told you, we need to work with core Java. Out of the core Java, there are just 4 topics you need to use, which you'll be using frequently in Selenium. You need to learn total 10 topics of core Java. Out of these, 4 are useful in your day-to-day work. The rest of the 6 are useful for interview process. Okay, so the interview process is different. What you're going to work with is different. Okay, because what you're going to work with, they won't ask you much about that. They're going to ask you some set of questions which you must know. Okay, so what is that? What is that? What is that? So in total, you need to learn 10 topics for core Java. Out of them, 4 will be useful in your day-to-day work. 6 will be important from interview point of view. That is it. That is your interview process. Right? So it is fixed. It is not an infinite thing. It is fixed. And you can prepare for that if you know what you need to prepare. We'll talk more about that once I start giving you the more introduction about it. So does that clear your doubt? Fine. Okay. Okay, there's a question here. Nigel says, so core Java consists of knowledge regarding objects, classes, and strings. Yes, Nigel, I'll be telling you what all you have to cover. Today itself will cover that. So that is also one of the slides which I have, which we'll be covering today. So in your today's session itself, these questions will be covered. I'll be arriving on this question, what is included in core Java at one specific slide. Okay, so there is one step-by-step, I've created these slides. So we'll be arriving at that as well, where you will get to know what is to be done in core Java. Right. So in today's session, by the time we wind up our session for today, your question will be answered. I'm not taking it right now. I'm just taking it after some time, right? Because step by step we'll move to that. right? All the things, of course, I'll tell you all the things what is required in core Java. I'll tell you all of them. Just wait for a couple of minutes. All right. Any other question, guys? All right. No questions. So let us start with our discussion then. Of course, as Anthony has started the question, the very first question has been asked. Keep asking the questions because that is how your doubts will be cleared. Okay. Of course, we have tried to cover whatever is required, but you must have your own question. You must have your own set of general questions, which we will be clearing in these sessions. So that is the point here. Otherwise, you can read it from Google as well. Of course, it takes time to read from Google, but the main point is in these live sessions, you can get your questions clarified and you can have the answers to them. Okay, so don't feel shy to ask any questions, and that's a good gesture which has been started by the first participant. So keep asking the questions. Let us start with our discussion. So Selenium web automation testing. What is Selenium? What is web? What is automation? And what is testing? We are going to talk about each and everything today. So in today's discussion, we're going to discuss what is testing, testing types, what is Selenium, what is automation testing, what are Selenium variants, supported platforms. We'll have a brief comparison between Selenium and QTP as well, because you might know that QTP is one more automation tool. Selenium is a recent tool which came into market. QTP was a tool which was there since 2000. So since we're moving into automation, we must know what are the competitors offering. We need to discuss that too. So we're going to compare them and why Selenium is in more demand as compared to QTP. You'll get to know about that. And in the end, we'll talk about the environment setup, what softwares we require to download and install so as to start working with Selenium. So these are the things we're going to discuss today. So what is testing? All of you might understand these terms. What is testing? Verifying whether the application works as expected or not. Application means the software which has been created. Whatever the software has been created, we need to check, is it working and giving us the required output or not. That is what we call as testing in simplest of the terms. So testing types, broadly, testing can be divided into two parts: manual testing and automation testing. Of course, if you Google how many types of testings are there, you'll get more than 100 types of testing. There are websites which are listing all those testing types. You'll get to know there are more than 100 types of testing. There are some weird names as well: monkey testing, ad hoc. Of course, monkey testing is a weird name. Of course, you have something called as black box testing, white box testing, ad hoc testing, this testing, that testing, your testing, my testing. So many testings are there. Broadly, we can divide them into two types: manual testing and automation testing. Manual testing is the one where a human sits in front of a computer and he or she performs the testing, and automation testing is one where a software performs the testing on your behalf. A human won't be executing the test cases, a software will be performing the test execution. That is what we call as automation testing. So what is Selenium? Selenium is one of the most popular open source. That is, open source means something which is freely available. You don't have to buy any license for that to use it. You don't have to pay any subscription fee for that. You just need to go to Selenium's website and download it. Okay, so it is an open source automated testing tool available in the market. In the last slide, we talked about that in automation testing, we require a software for testing. So Selenium is that software which is going to perform the testing on our behalf. So that is what we term as automation testing. So Selenium is one of the most popular open source automated testing tools available in the market. What is automation testing? It is the process of validating and verifying whether the software program works as expected using any automation tool. So this definition is the same definition which we saw in the very first slide. It just has 4 additional words: using any automation tool. So when you start using an automation tool, that testing becomes automation testing. Okay. It can be QTP, it can be Selenium, it can be IBM RFT, rational functional tester. It can be anything. So if you start using a test, if you start using a tool, then we term that kind of testing as an automation testing. So automation tool performs the testing instead of a tester. The main purpose of automation testing is to automate regression testing. Now this is an important point. It is a question hidden inside it. In the interviews, you will be asked a question. Generally, it is asked in the interviews. How do you decide whether a test case can be automated or not? Because you might know that in the testing process, what we do is we create test scenarios and then we create test cases, generally in an Excel sheet. From that from that Excel sheet, we decide which test cases are to be automated and which are to be not. Okay, so that is generic testing process. Okay, first we create test plan, then we create test scenarios, then we create test cases. So from those test cases which have been created, which have been documented, how do you decide whether they are to be done using automation or are they to be done using manual mode? Let us talk about that. In general, wherever you see automation, be it the car manufacturing industry, be it the food manufacturing industry, you might have seen those programs on Discovery Channel or National Geographic Channel where they show you how the robots are manufacturing the cars, how on the conveyor belts food is being put in the packets and it is being packaged automatically using machines. So wherever you see automation, it has been brought in that industry where the processes were predictable in nature. Humans saw that if I have to do something repeatedly, why not to program a machine to do that? So that is where the automation arrived, be it car manufacturing industry or food manufacturing industry. Same thing is applicable in software industry as well. Whatever things were being done repeatedly, humans thought, why not to automate that? Okay, so whatever test cases are repetitive in nature, we automate them. So if someone asks you in the interview, how do you decide whether a test case is to be automated or not? What is the answer to that? The answer is, if that test case is repetitive in nature, we will automate that, otherwise we will not. Now, if you talk about the repetitive things, if you talk about the repetitive steps, there are different kinds of testing, as I told you. White box testing, black box testing, monkey testing, ad hoc testing. There is something called as regression testing. There is something called as smoke testing. Out of all the testings which exist, regression testing is the one which is most repetitive one. It is the most repetitive kind of nature. With each new build, we have to perform the regression testing, right? So regression testing is the most repetitive kind of testing, and since this is the most repetitive kind of testing, this is the most suitable contender for automation. Of course, we can automate other kinds of testings as well. We can automate functional testing, we can automate performance testing as well, but regression testing is the most repetitive kind of testing. That is why we automate regression testing. So the main purpose of automation is to automate regression testing. Okay, so out of all the testings, 100 plus types of testing, black box testing, white box testing, regression testing is the most suitable one. Okay, so it is just like you go into an ice cream parlor. There are so many flavors of ice cream there: vanilla ice cream, chocolate ice cream, butterscotch, mango, blackcurrant. So many kinds of ice creams are there. The shopkeeper asks you, which one do you want to have? You say, I will go with vanilla. That is my favorite one. Okay, of course, if vanilla is not available, you can say my second best favorite is butterscotch. I'll go with that one. Okay, so similarly for Selenium, the Selenium tool has the favorite testing as the regression testing. Okay, so Selenium's favorite testing is regression testing because it is the most repetitive one. So here we get the maximum return on investment. Okay, other kinds of testing can also be automated, but we go with the regression testing in the first approach. One general question which people have is, generally what happens is when a project is being automated, when automation is being brought into a project, managers generally, I've heard from many people that my manager has asked us to automate all the test cases. Now, if your manager asks you to automate all the test cases, or if your team lead or if your supervisor asks you to automate each and everything in your project, then this is not possible. You cannot automate all the test cases in a project. Generally, the accepted number is you can automate 60 to 70% of test cases. Okay, so if you can achieve automation for 60 to 70% of your test cases, then you say, yeah, we have automated the project. You can never automate 100% of the test cases. 30 to 40% of the test cases still will be executed manually. The reason will be that for these 30 to 40% of test cases, it won't be useful to automate them. It will take more time to automate them. Doing them manually will be easier, and since they are not repetitive, we'll put them in the manual execution category. So we will never automate all the test cases in a project. It is not feasible. If you try to automate that, it is going to cost the company a lot. So 60 to 70% of the test cases are automated. 30 to 40% test cases are executed manually. So there's a question here. What do we mean by repetitive? Are they repetitive as in data? In regression testing, whatever we put, that is repetitive in nature. Just for an example, I'll give you an example. What can be termed as repetitive? Okay, not only in data, data is one of the conditions for repetition. There are other conditions as well for repetition. So just to give you an example, everyone of you uses WhatsApp in the mobile. So what is WhatsApp? WhatsApp is a software. Let's say the current version of WhatsApp which we have, okay, you must know that in WhatsApp we have a feature called as stories. Okay, so earlier it was not there. This feature of stories has been copied from this is Snapchat. Snapchat offered this feature in the very first place. Now we have the feature of stories in WhatsApp. We have it in the Facebook as well. So this feature was not there earlier. Let us say before we had this feature, we had this version as something version 13.5.7. I'm just using some random number. In this version of WhatsApp, we had 4 features. Just assume we could exchange text messages, we could exchange video messages, we could exchange audio messages, and we could also make calls. Okay, voice call or video call. So these were the 4 features. After that, what they did, WhatsApp thought Snapchat has the feature of stories. Why not we implement that as well? So what they did, they introduced a version 14.0. In that, they have to retain the first 4 features. They are there. In addition to that, they have introduced one more feature, the feature of stories. So when they introduce this new feature of stories, what will they do? They have to test before, in the new version, before they release it to the general public, they have to test this version at their own end. So what will they do? Before even they test this 5th feature which they have added, they're going to check the previous 4 features which they had in the older version of WhatsApp. Due to addition of this new feature, the previous 4 features should not stop working. They should keep working as they were working. So this new feature must not have an impact on the already existing features. So when you're checking the older features in the new version of the software, we term that as regression testing. So here there is no repetition of the data. Why are we calling it as regression? Regression means doing something repetitively. So what is repeating here? So this is a new feature. Let's say after 3 months, WhatsApp introduces a new feature in version, they say 14.5, a new version is introduced. In that, they're going to have the first 5 features as such. They introduce a new feature number 6, where you can pay for something. Okay, just like you can pay using your wallets. Okay, so Paytm wallet or Apple wallet. Similarly, WhatsApp introduces a new payment feature. Okay, so now you can pay using WhatsApp also. So in the version 14.5, what are they going to do? They're going to check before they check the 6th feature, the newly added feature. Before they check that, they're going to check the previous 5 features which they had in the older version of Facebook, that is 14.0. So since they're checking the feature number 1, 2, 3, and 4 again, which has already been tested in 14.0, since they're checking that again, so we say we are repeating that process. So I'm just checking whether text message application is working or not, whether video functionality is working or not, whether audio functionality is working or not. I'm just rechecking it. So this is a repetitive process. So that is what we say. This process is repetitive in nature, and that is why when we are going to test it, this kind of testing where you're checking the previous version, previous features of the software in the new version, we call that as regression testing. Okay, and this new versions keep coming quite a lot. You might notice in your phones, if you have not set your phones on automatic update, if you have set it to manual, you might keep seeing those notifications where it says, okay, so a new feature is a new version of the software is available of this app, a new version is available of this app. So you update it, it keeps introducing the new features. Okay, so this keeps happening, new versions keep releasing, and you have to test them again and again. So when you're testing the older features in the new version of the software, we term it as regression testing. Okay, and since this process is repetitive in nature, we just automate it. All right, so is this clear, Sayanthani? All right, great. Okay, so if someone asks you, the question which someone can ask you in the interview is, how do you decide whether something can be automated or not? Some test case can be automated or not. So the answer is, we can automate we automate those test cases which are repetitive in nature. If they're not repetitive in nature, we don't automate that. Right? Now, as I told you, you go to an ice cream parlor, you say, I want to have vanilla ice cream. The shopkeeper says, no, we ran out of vanilla ice cream. We have some other ice creams. We have butterscotch, we have chocolate, we have blackcurrant. Which one do you want to have? So these are the other flavors of the ice cream. Which other tests can be automated? Okay, apart from regression testing, of course, testing is the most suitable contender for automation. What other tests can be automated? We can automate smoke tests and data-driven tests as well. Now, what are smoke tests? Just in this example, when WhatsApp moved from 13.5.7 to version 14.0, before even they perform regression testing, before even they check whether video calling is working or not, video sharing is working or not, whether audio sharing is working or not, WhatsApp has to check its critical functionality. What is WhatsApp? Primarily, WhatsApp is a text messaging app. Okay, other features were added gradually, but primarily WhatsApp is a text messaging app. So the critical functionality for WhatsApp is the text messaging service. So before they check the feature number 2, 3, and 4, what they're going to do, they're going to check this critical functionality. Is this working in the new version or not? If in the version 14.0 they are not able to send text messages, then there is no use of checking whether videos can be exchanged or not, whether audio call can be made or not. There is no use of that. They have to fix first the text messaging service. So when you check the critical functionality of the application in a new version or an updated version of the software, we term that kind of testing as smoke testing. Okay, and since with each new build, with each new version of the software, you have to test the critical functionality, this process is also repetitive in nature. So in version 14.5 also we will automate, we will check whether the text messaging service is working or not, the feature number 1. So that also will check. So before regression testing, we perform smoke testing. So since this is also repetitive in nature, we will automate that as well. In regression testing, the magnitude of testing is more. You have to check feature number 2, 3, and 4. In critical functionalities in smoke testing, you check just critical features. You don't check all the features. Okay, so the magnitude of testing is less in smoke testing. Regression testing has more magnitude of testing. So smoke testing is also the one which is repetitive in nature, and we automate that too. The other kind of testing which we automate is data-driven testing. What is data-driven testing? Data-driven testing is here the repetition of data comes into picture, the question which was asked. For example, let us say on Facebook, you have this username and password text box. You want to check this login functionality, that using some weird or random combination of username and password, am I able to log in or not? Okay, so can I just break into this application by using some random combinations? So you have some 500 combinations of usernames and passwords. You have to send one by one all of these usernames and passwords, and you have to check whether are you able to log in into the application or not, right? This kind of testing will be termed as data-driven testing. So what will you do? You will create an Excel sheet of the data, those 500 usernames and passwords. You will put in an Excel sheet. One by one, you're going to send these usernames and passwords in these text boxes. Vandana says cannot hear you. Guys, any one of you is are you having any problem in the audio? Okay, so just one. Okay, just a moment. Just a moment, guys. Where it sometimes happens in GoToMeeting that one of the participants is not able to hear. So if just in case while in the session you're not able to hear, what you can do, just log out of the session and log in again. Because generally that solves the problem. Okay, so that is what just I asked to the one of the participants. She was having problem. Okay, so I was saying that in data-driven testing, what we do, we put all the data, the usernames and passwords in an Excel sheet like here, and one by one, we're going to send these usernames and passwords to this text box. Okay, so when we're going to send these usernames and passwords to these text boxes, one by one, by reading it from Excel sheet, here, this process is also repetitive in nature. What are we doing? We are entering a username, entering a password, and clicking on login button. Again, we are entering the second username and entering a second password, again clicking on the login button. Again, third username, third password, and clicking on login button. So this process is also repetitive in nature. It is just the data which we are sending to the application that is changing. So this kind of testing is also called as data-driven testing, and since this is repetitive in nature, this is also automated. Okay, so here there is a repetition in the data which we're sending to the application. So we term this kind of testing as data-driven testing. All right. So these are the main kinds of testings we automate in our projects: regression testing, smoke testing, data-driven testing. Okay. All right. So Vandana, now are you able to hear me? Is everything fine with the audio this time? Okay, cool. So it happens sometimes, just in case if it happens again, the solution is, okay, just like solution to most of the problems in computer is you just restart your computer and it starts working. Similarly, the most accurate solution for problems in GoToMeeting is just log out and log in again. And due to some weird magical reason, everything will start working, right? So let us continue. Now, Selenium variants. Selenium, just like any other software, has its own version. The current version of Selenium has been updated. It is not 3.13.0, it is 3.14.0. That is the current version of Selenium which has been introduced. Okay, so this is the version of Selenium. Now, why is it 3.14.0? Why is it not for 15.14.0? And why is it not 2.14.0? So there is a just small story behind that as well. Let us talk about that. Why is it starting from 3 and not from 15 or 2? Let's talk about that. Selenium as an automation tool was introduced in 2004. At that time, it was called as Selenium, of course. So it was called as Selenium. When it was introduced in 2004, at that time, the basic working of Selenium was, the basic architecture of Selenium was, it had, I'll just draw three boxes. Okay, so the first box here represents the browser. The second box here represents something called as Selenium RC. RC stands for Selenium Remote Control. And the third box here represents the server. Okay, so in 2004, using Selenium, if you had to automate an application, what will you do? Of course, when you're automating an application using Selenium, of course, you will be opening some browser, you will be sending a request to some application which is hosted on some server. At that time, browser had to send the detail to something called as Selenium RC. There was one component in Selenium when we downloaded Selenium. So there was something called as Selenium RC. There, the request was forwarded. Selenium RC processed that request, and then it forwarded that request to the server where the web application was hosted. Now, after that server responded back to Selenium RC, then Selenium RC then forwarded back the response back to browser. So Selenium RC was acting as an intermediator between browser and server. When this was acting as an intermediator, to set up this process, to automate using this approach, you had to learn two things in 2004. What were those? You had to learn some sort of programming language like Java. Along with that, you had to learn networking also, because networking was required to set up the Selenium RC thing. So you had to learn these two things so as to automate the test cases in Selenium. Now just go back to 2004. In 2004, we had a tool called as QTP. It is still there. It was introduced in 2000. So by 2004, it had gained popularity and people started using it. Most of the people who were moving to automation, they were coming from manual testing background. Okay, so just think about a manual tester in 2004. In manual testing, you were not doing any programming. Now you thought about moving to automation. So now you have two options in front of you. You can move to QTP where there is no programming. It is a UI based tool. You just need to learn how this tool works and how to do different processes. So you can go to QTP, which is an easier way. You can go to Selenium. If you are some James Bond kind of thing, you want to choose the tough path, you can go to Selenium. Now, if you go to Selenium, you will have to learn some programming language, you will have to learn networking, and the whole recipe becomes complex in nature. Okay, so generally, people don't want to move towards something which is tough, which is difficult to learn. Of course, the human tendency is to go towards something which is easier. So at that time, when Selenium was introduced in 2004, QTP was the choice of people who came and wanted to learn automation. So Selenium found very less number of people using Selenium. Reason was it was difficult to learn. So Selenium people thought that we have to do something about it. If you keep it this way, people are not going to like it. So what they did, they started improvising it, and they introduced a new version of Selenium in 2011. That was called as Selenium 2. So it took them 7 years to improvise that tool. So in that improvisation, what they did, they changed the architecture. So now instead of 3 boxes, we had 2 boxes. One box was representing the browser, and the other was representing the server. They removed that Selenium RC, the intermediator from the picture. Now the browser and server could communicate directly with each other. Intermediator was not required. When they removed that intermediator, the communication started happening between the browser and server directly. The process became easier and people started using it. So it is only after 2011 that Selenium gained popularity. Earlier, people did not like it because of its complexity. Only after 2011, when it became easier, then people started using it, and then that is where people started liking it. Okay, so what new thing they had introduced in Selenium 2? In Selenium 2, they had the earlier components. Okay, in Selenium 1, we had Selenium. When we talk about Selenium, Selenium is not a single software, it is a combination of softwares. Okay, so in 2004, when Selenium was introduced, the different components of Selenium which we had were, it had something called as Selenium IDE. That was one of the components. We will talk about that. I'm just telling you the names of those components. IDE. It has something called as Selenium RC. It had something called as Grid. Okay, so it had 3 things inside it: Selenium IDE, RC, and Grid. That is what we termed this entire package as Selenium. In 2011, what they did, all these components were still there. We still had IDE, we still had RC, we still had Grid. They introduced a new thing called as WebDriver. You might have heard about this WebDriver, you might have read about it somewhere, and that is why you thought of joining this course. You might have read a job advertisement related to WebDriver. So WebDriver is a component of Selenium Suite, which was introduced in 2011. And that is where the processes became easier. Selenium, in their official blog, the Selenium team in their official blog suggested that whatever work was being done using Selenium RC, Selenium RC was a major component back when it was introduced. They said whatever work you were doing using Selenium RC, avoid using Selenium RC now, start doing the same work using WebDriver. Okay, so RC was still kept in the picture just to support the projects if they were using, just like whenever Windows introduces a new version, Windows 10 was introduced, they don't stop the Windows 8 or Windows 8.1 immediately. Okay, so when Windows 10 was introduced, they said now we will stop the support for Windows XP. Okay, so they keep supporting the previous version so that if some organizations are still using them, they have time to migrate to the new versions of the software. Okay, so Selenium RC was still kept, but they said move to Selenium WebDriver. Okay, if new projects are automating their projects, they should automate using Selenium WebDriver. Okay, so this Selenium WebDriver was a new component in Selenium 2. This again was improvised in 2016. A new version of Selenium was introduced that was called as Selenium 3. In Selenium 3, what we had, the architecture still remained same. We had two boxes. One was representing the browser and other was representing the server. So there was no change in the architecture. There was no change in the way we were automating the applications. We had the change in the number of components. We had IDE. It was still retained. We had grid. We had WebDriver. What we did not have was Selenium RC. They removed RC from the picture, so they stopped the support for Selenium RC in 2016. Okay, so this is how Selenium has moved over the years. Currently, the current generation of Selenium, we say it is Selenium 3rd generation we are working in. Now, whatever versions are introduced in Selenium 3, they always start from 3. So that is why the current version of Selenium is Selenium 3.14.0, where the first 3 signifies its generation. Okay, so we're working in Selenium 3rd generation. Okay, so since its inception in 2016, 14 major changes have taken place inside it. Okay, so 14 major releases have been released after its inception. Whatever versions we had in Selenium 2, all of them started with 2. So the last stable release in Selenium 2 was Selenium 2.53.1. Okay, so it's always started with 2. So 2 means Selenium 2nd generation, the first digit. 53 means 53 major changes had taken place inside it since its inception in 2011. And 1 means after the 53rd major change, 1 minor change has also taken place. So that is how the nomenclature works in Selenium. So now whatever version is released, it always starts with the digit 3, right? We'll talk about more these components which we have. We'll talk about them. But before that, what we generally do is after approximately 55 minutes of session, we take a break for 5 minutes. That is what we're going to do now. So that just in case if you want to answer a call or if you want to have some water or whatever you want to do, you can in these 5 minutes. So we'll pause the discussion for 5 minutes now. We'll come back after 5 minutes and resume our discussion. Okay, so in those 5 minutes, you can do whatever you want to do. And I'll start an online timer also so that every one of us can keep a track of the time. So I'm going to start a timer and we'll resume our discussion now after 5 minutes. So see you guys after Okay, guys, so now let us resume our discussion. I hope you guys are back after the break. So let us start with our discussion. Okay, so before break, we discussed how Selenium has evolved over the years, and current generation of Selenium, which we have, is Selenium third generation. So that is what has been written inside this slide. Current version of Selenium is 3.14.0. Selenium 3 comprises of following three components: IDE, WebDriver, and Grid, which I already told you about, that these are the three components. Now, what do these components do? Let me just briefly tell you about them as well. Selenium IDE is a small plugin which has been created just to get you started on automation. Okay, so if you're moving from manual testing to automation testing, it will just give you a flavor of automation testing, that what automation testing is like. But actually, we won't work with this in real-time projects. In real-time projects, we'll be using Selenium WebDriver. Okay, so that is what is most popular as well. Whenever you will be working in your real-time projects, this is what you will be using, Selenium WebDriver. Selenium Grid, the third component, is used when you have many test cases to be executed and you want to distribute your test cases among different machines so that you can decrease the execution time. Okay, if you execute all the test cases in one machine, it'll take a lot of time. But if you distribute the work among different machines, then your execution time will decrease. Okay, so Selenium Grid is that component which we use for distributing the test cases, but primarily the major automation will be done by Selenium WebDriver. So 90% of the automation is what you will be doing using Selenium WebDriver. 5% of the work is done by Selenium IDE, that is very negligible, and Selenium Grid is also doing some 5% of the work. So primary component in this suite is Selenium WebDriver. Okay, so that is what we'll be working with. We'll be focusing more on that. Now, supported platforms. Selenium is a cross-platform tool. What do we mean by that? Cross-platform means you can use it on Mac, you can use it on Windows, you can use it on Linux. Any operating system you can use to test your applications. Now, why are we saying to test your applications in different operating systems? Actually, this platform is a word which is used to uh, convey, which is used to designate two things. One is the operating system and the other is browser. The combination of these is what we term as the platform. Okay, now operating system is understandable. Of course, you have to install something in your machine. So that machine might be running on Windows, that machine might be running on Mac operating system or Linux. So operating system is understandable. But what is browser doing here? Why are we talking about browser in this discussion? There's a reason for that. Let's talk about that. We'll come back to this in 5 minutes. In the very first slide, I told you that we are going to test applications. Okay, so what is testing? I told you testing means testing, verifying whether the application is working as expected or not. That is the first slide I told you. Now, applications are of many types. When you talk about applications, they're of many types. There are desktop applications. Desktop applications are the applications, or the software. Application is simply software. Okay, so applications or those softwares which get installed in your system, and after that they don't require any internet connection for their working, they are called as desktop applications. For example, calculator in my machine. This calculator doesn't require any internet connection for its working, so we will term this kind of software as desktop application. Then there are web applications. Okay, as you can guess from its name, those applications which require internet connection for their working, they're called as web applications. We'll discuss more on that. We'll dig deeper into this. But before that, the third kind of application is the mobile application. Okay, the apps which you install in your mobile, they're called as mobile applications. Now the question is, can we test all of them using Selenium? The answer is no. We cannot test all the kinds of applications. We can only test web applications using Selenium. We cannot test desktop applications using Selenium. We cannot test mobile applications. We only can test web applications. Okay. Now in web applications, let us understand more, dig deep into this. What do we term as a web application? Okay. As the name signifies, a web application means. Okay, so there is a question here. Apeksha says, can you please explain mainframe-based applications? Apeksha, that mainframe-based application will be installed on some sort of server, right? You don't have mainframe application in your desktop or your mobile, so that will be installed somewhere on the server, right? So that is a software which has been created and something it is doing. That is something which also will not be tested by Selenium. Okay, I'm moving towards that only, so all your doubts will be clarified. That what is why we haven't talked about mainframe application. So just 5 minutes, and all your doubts will be cleared. Okay, so I'm coming on that. When you talk about web applications, when I say an application, a software which requires internet for its working, now there are many things which require internet for its working. For example, Outlook. Microsoft Outlook. Okay, so we know that we use it for syncing email items, and for working of this software we require internet. So can we term as web application? We'll discuss that. Let us put it in the list. So under web application, we have seen one, Microsoft Outlook. It requires internet connection, but can we term it as web application or not? We'll discuss that. Then the second kind of applications are those applications which require a browser for opening. Okay, when I want to open Facebook, okay, I'm going to show you a couple of pages here. You just have to reply me with a yes or no, and we'll discuss the concept here. When I say we have to open Facebook, can we term this Facebook as a web application or not? Just reply with a yes or not. Of course, I'll tell you the answer for that. Just reply with a yes or no. Okay, let's see one more page. There is a news portal, The Hindu, in India. So that is a news portal. Can we term this as a web application or not? Of course, just like Facebook, it also requires internet for its working. But can we term it as web application or not? Just reply with a yes or no. Okay. One more page. There is one Wall Street Journal. Again, that is a news portal. The only difference it is based in US. The Hindu is based in India. Can we term this as a web application or not? What do you think? Just type in yes or no. There is no need to type any reason for that. I just want to see your responses. Okay, so I got the answers here. Let us discuss the concept. So under the topic of web applications, I've shown you 3 pages. The first is Facebook. I showed you one more page, The Hindu. And I showed you one more, Wall Street Journal. Again, that is a news portal. And out of these, which can be considered as web application or not? Let us understand the term web application. Web application means an application, a software which is installed somewhere on the web, somewhere on the internet, and we are accessing that. When we have to access that, we require internet connection for that. Okay, so we'll come to Outlook after some time. Let us talk about Facebook. When you open Facebook, what it does. The typical characteristic of a web application is when you open web Facebook, The Hindu, or Wall Street Journal, the typical characteristic of a web application is that it can offer you a customized content based on who is opening it. When you open Facebook, you're going to see something else. When I open Facebook, I'm going to see something else. So two different users, two concurrent users are not going to see the same thing on Facebook. Okay, so your news feed will be based on your friend circle, your friend list, your geographical location, which pages you have liked. So it is based on that. My news feed is going to be based on how many friends do I have, what have they shared, what pages have I liked, and what is my geographical location. So based on that, we'll be getting the news. So Facebook has the capability to display a unique content to each user, or we can say it has the capability to show a customized content to each user. Now, when you have to serve a customized content to each user, you have to write complex algorithms for that. You have to write complex softwares so as to show customized content to the user. Okay, now Facebook is, we can say, is a full-fledged software. It is installed somewhere on the internet. It has a server where we don't know, and we are not interested in that as well. But Facebook is a full-fledged software which has the capability to show customized content to each user, because so many algorithms, so many programs have been written so as to display the unique content. Now, Facebook is something which is not installed on my system. It is installed somewhere on the internet. To access that, what I need to do, I need to some sort of browser like Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer, and using that browser we'll be navigating to that application, that Facebook. Okay, so Facebook qualifies to be called as a web application. Okay, so it is not installed in my laptop or desktop. It is installed somewhere on the browser, and it is something, it has the capability to show a dynamic content. Okay, the typical characteristic of a web application is its dynamic content. By dynamic content we mean the content should vary from user to user. So if it is serving a dynamic content, it has the capability to show dynamic content to two concurrent users, then we term that as a web application. So Facebook is a web application. Let us talk about The Hindu. The Hindu is a news portal. When you open this, two concurrent users, irrespective of their location. Okay, again, someone says your audio quality is going up and down. Just a moment. Guys, just check one thing here. We'll come back here just a moment. In your go-to meeting panel, just see, you must be able to see something like this. Okay, so there must be some control like this. There will be tabs here like audio, screen, and webcam. Under the audio section, you should be able to see this sound check. This must be green in color. If it is green in color, then you will be able to receive my audio properly. If it is red or orange, then you will hear fluctuations in the audio. So that green signal means at your place everything is fine. If it is orange or red, that means the reception at your place will not be proper. Okay, so if it is changing from red to orange to green, that means at your place there is some problem in the internet connection. Okay, so at my place it is green, that means everything is fine here. What is being transmitted from my side is okay, but there's a problem in the reception. Okay, so there's nothing I can do about it. I'm sorry for that. Okay, so just check if you can restart your router or the modem, whatever you have. All right. Okay, so coming back here, the Hindu, two concurrent users, when they open that, they're going to see the same content. They're not going to see different content. Okay, so unlike Facebook, the Hindu cannot show you a unique content. Okay, so it is always going to show you the same content to two different users. So we term this kind of pages like the Hindu, which cannot serve unique content, we term them as a website. Okay, so the Hindu, technically it is a website, it is not a web application. Generally what we do is we term everything as a website. We say Facebook is a website, Gmail is a website, LinkedIn is a website, but technically that is wrong. Facebook is a web application, Gmail is a web application, LinkedIn is a web application. On the other hand, the Hindu is a website. A website is very simple in nature. It cannot show you a unique content. It is written, and creating a website is very simple in nature. So that is why a website always show you a static content. Okay, static content means two users are going to see the same content. So the typical characteristic of a website is its static content. So the Hindu is not a web application. Let us talk about Wall Street Journal. So what's different in Wall Street Journal? It is also a news portal just like the Hindu. What is the difference between the Hindu and Wall Street Journal? If you see Wall Street Journal at the top here, there is one sign in option. If you sign in here, the very first thing it is going to ask you is what kind of news do you want to see? Do you want to see politics news? Do you want to see business news, markets news, economic news? What kind of news do you want to see? So Wall Street Journal also has the capability to show you a unique content based on your choices, just like Facebook. So Wall Street Journal is also an application. Okay, so it has that dynamic nature. It can show two different users, two different contents. So it is dynamic in nature. So Wall Street Journal is also a web application. The Hindu is not a web application because it is a website. It is serving static content to each user. Okay, of course it will get updated after 1 hour. Okay, the news will get updated after 1 hour, but two different users will get updated. Okay, so they're not going to see different content, right? So the Hindu will be termed as a website, Facebook will be termed as a web application, Wall Street Journal will be termed as a web application, Gmail is a web application, LinkedIn is a web application. All of them have the capability to show you dynamic content. Now let us talk about Outlook. What is Outlook? As we talked about, Outlook also requires internet connection for its working. Where is that? Okay, it is not opening due to some reason. Okay, so Outlook also requires internet connection for its working, but it doesn't require any browser for opening. Just like a desktop software, Outlook first gets installed in your system. So Microsoft Outlook got installed in my system when I installed Microsoft Office in my system. Okay, along with Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, other things also got installed in my system. So first it got installed like a desktop application. And just like a web application, now it requires internet connection for working. So we can say it is a hybrid. It is not a pure web application. It is a hybrid of desktop and web application. So this is also not a pure web application. So out of these things which I've shown you, Facebook and Wall Street Journal are web applications. The Hindu and Outlook will not be considered as the pure web applications. When you're working with Selenium, Selenium is going to be used to test some sort of web application. When you are hired for working in Selenium, you will not be hired to test the Hindu. You will be hired either for testing Wall Street Journal kind of application or Facebook kind of application, because these are web application. To test a website, you don't require Selenium kind of software. Of course, when you're learning Selenium, you can run Selenium on the Hindu as well. Okay, so but when you are working in the real time, you will not be working on some website, you will be working on some web application. That is what you will be hired for. Okay, Selenium also cannot work with Outlook. Outlook is a, as I told you, hybrid. So it is kind of desktop application. Selenium cannot interact with desktop applications. Selenium doesn't have any control on desktop applications. So Selenium cannot test Outlook. Selenium cannot test any calculator which is installed in my system. Selenium also cannot test any mobile applications. Whatever you need to test using Selenium, first of all, the prerequisite is it must be openable through browser. If it can open through browser, then it can be tested by Selenium. That is the very first condition for Selenium. Okay, Selenium is only for testing web applications, and for testing for web applications, the prerequisite is they must be openable through browser. If it can be opened by browser, Selenium can test that. Now, the Hindu can also be opened through browser. So yes, you can also test the Hindu through Selenium, but that is not what you will be hired for. Okay, so it is just like you have a rocket. We use rockets or spaceships to cover larger distances. Okay, so typically to go out of the Earth's surface, we are either moving to Moon or Mars. That is why we require spaceships. You don't require spaceships to move from London to Paris. Okay, so just because spaceship is very fast in speed, we don't use that to cover small distances. We use it to cover bigger distances. Okay, similarly, though Selenium can test Facebook and Wall Street Journal, it can also test the Hindu, but we don't use it for that. Okay, just because it is very capable, we don't use it to test websites. We use Selenium for testing web applications, because web applications are complex in nature. That is what we use it for. So whenever you're going to use Selenium, just think that, can that application be opened through browser? If your answer is yes, then yes, it can be tested using Selenium. If it cannot be opened through browser, then it cannot be tested using Selenium. So I cannot open Microsoft Outlook using browser, so I cannot test that. I cannot open my calculator using browser, so I cannot test that. Only that application which can be opened through a browser, that can be tested using Selenium. Let me take a question here. Apeksha says, as you said, mainframe work on browser, then what is the difference between mainframe and web-based application? Apeksha, mainframe is something which we are not accessing through a browser. Just understand this. Let's see that. Why do we use mainframes? Mainframes are typically used in banking applications when ATMs are to be connected. Okay, so there is one use I know. I haven't worked with mainframes. That is what I've heard from my colleagues. So I'm just taking that example. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Mainframes are used for connecting different ATMs to the banking network. Okay, so there is one ATM here in one city, there is one ATM here in another city. So all the ATMs are to be connected to a central network. So for that we have something called as mainframe. Now these servers, we won't be interacting, we won't be opening through a browser. Okay, so we have some ATM machine. ATM machine is sending some request to the server, and server is responding it back. So it is something different. Okay, so these kind of applications, whatever softwares are written for mainframes, they are not opened through a browser. We cannot access them through browser. Okay, so mainframe applications are different, entirely different applications. They are not even in the scope, and Selenium will not be working with them as well. Okay, so mainframe application cannot be opened through a browser. So am I clear with that? All right. So this question, Anthony says mainframe, no UI. Yes, as Anthony says, there is no UI in mainframe. Okay, we humans are not directly interacting with mainframe server. It is an ATM machine which is interacting with the mainframe server. Okay, so that is sending and receiving the request for that, and it doesn't have a UI. It cannot be opened through a browser. So Selenium won't be working with mainframe applications, right? So Selenium cannot be used to test mainframe. No, Selenium cannot be used to test mainframe. The prerequisite for Selenium is if it can be opened through browser, it can be tested through Selenium. If your answer is yes, we can test it through Selenium. If your answer is no, if you cannot open your application through browser, then you cannot test it using Selenium. Okay, there's a question, can Selenium be used to test APIs? No, you cannot use Selenium to test APIs. For testing APIs, you have SOAP UI. You have JMeter. They can test your APIs, but Selenium cannot. Selenium can test those things which have UI. APIs don't have UI. Web services don't have a UI. This is something which machines use for interaction. There is no human, and if there is no human, there is no UI required. So Selenium cannot test APIs. Can Selenium integrate with SOAP UI? Yes, Selenium can integrate with SOAP UI, but Selenium cannot test APIs. Okay, for that you have something called as SOAP UI. Because both of them work at a different level. Let us just see that as well. Whenever an application is created, whenever let's say Facebook, let's talk about Facebook is a web application. Whenever an application is created, an application is always divided into three parts. The first is the UI, which a human is going to interact with. The second part of that application is the business logic. And third part, the third layer of an application is the database. Any application you talk about, it will always have these three layers. The UI part, which the human is going to interact with, the business logic, the programming which is going to go behind this. If I enter the credentials here and I click on sign up, what processes are going to run behind that? We won't be able to see that, but someone has written the logic for that, right? So that is what we consider as the business logic, because that is going to be termed as the business logic, that programming which is going to go behind that, that will be business logic. And then there's database. Okay, so where is my information being stored? That is what we do in database. Selenium will be working with this layer. Selenium can only test what is there in UI layer. Selenium cannot test this business logic. Selenium cannot test your database. Okay, so whatever is the UI layer, that can be tested using Selenium. Now, why do we use SOAP UI? This is one application. This is one entire application. Let us say this is Facebook. Okay, Facebook has three components: UI, business logic, and database. There is one more application. It also has three things. It has UI, it has business logic, and it also has database. Okay, so let's say this is Instagram. Okay, what are APIs? What are web services? When the business logic of one application interacts with the business logic of another application, that communication which happens, which takes place, we term as that application takes place through a web service. When we humans have to take an information from an application, that information is exchanged by some browser. Okay, using a browser, you access the UI of the application. But when the business logic of one application has to communicate with the business logic of another application, that communication which is happening, to test that, we require SOAP UI. Okay, so SOAP UI works on an entirely different layer. Selenium works on an entirely different layer. So Selenium is going to test the UI thing of Instagram or Facebook. To test the business logic communication which is taking place between Facebook and Instagram, that is going to be tested by SOAP UI. Selenium cannot do anything in that. Right? So are you guys clear with this? What is Selenium for and what is SOAP UI is for? Do you guys understand that? Okay, great. Because this is something which must be very clear to you guys, and this is the place where people are not clear about. Okay, in general, I'm telling you. So these things need to be discussed. So that is why I thought today's session is going to be based on the theoretical one. That is why I discussed these things. So this is very important for you to understand. So let's see this one question here. Nigel says, I have a question to ask verbally based on a recent interview once you attend. Sure, Nigel, you can speak. I'll just unmute you. Just a moment. Okay, now you can unmute from your side and you can speak. I cannot hear you, Nijal. First, I guess you haven't unmuted yourself from your side. Then only you will be. I will be able to hear you. Okay, how do I unmute? Just a moment. At the top of your screen, we just this button which you see, this will be gray in color. Okay, so you need to click on this thing, and this mic kind of button. This will be gray. When you click on that, it will turn green. So that means you can speak. If it is gray, that means you are muted. Okay, so you're not able to see that. Okay, I'm not sure why you cannot see that. Okay, just try doing it. I mean, only after you unmute yourself, then only I'll be able to hear you. Or if you're not able to find that, you can type in your question also, not a problem. All right. You can type in your question, not a problem, Nijal. Okay, so it is an interview question, might be big one. Okay, just try seeing that if you can unmute uh, from your side, then only we'll be able to see that. Okay, sure, no problem. Okay, so meanwhile, there's a question here. So Anthony says, how can you use one test case to test in different environment? So Anthony, what do you mean by different environment? Like, can you put it in exact words? Because environment means so many things. Okay, so let's discuss that. Okay, so if it was an interview question, let us come to that. Okay, so let me just come to this slide. We started from this slide. Okay, so I told you that Selenium is a cross-platform tool. What do we mean by cross-platform? Platform is a combination of two words, operating system and the browser. And that is what we term as the platform. Right? Now, you can use any operating system and any browser to test your application. You can be using Mac, you can be using Windows, you can be using Linux as an operating system. Now, as I told you, Selenium is going to test those applications which can be opened through a browser. Now, which browser? You can use Chrome as the browser to test your application through Selenium. You can choose Firefox. You can choose uh, Safari. You can use Opera. You can use Internet Explorer. You can use Edge, Microsoft Edge. So these are these browsers you can use in any of these operating systems. Okay, so any operating system can use any of these browsers to test the application. You might have any combination of these operating systems and browsers. That is what we term as cross-platform tool. So Selenium has no restriction that it cannot test your application in Mac or Windows, or it cannot test your application in Opera or in Safari. It can test all the applications in all the browsers. If it can be opened through browser, it can be tested. The browser can be any. That is what we term as cross-platform tool. Okay. Now, if someone asks you, how do you, as there was one question here, say Anthony says that in the interviews, there was one question asked that how do you test a test case of one environment in another environment? So environment means generally what they mean is that you have created your test case in Mac and you are executing your test case in Chrome and it is working fine. How can you test it in Windows? So that is also what we term as environment. Okay, so the test case which you've executed on Mac, how can you execute the same test case on Windows as well? Okay, if you want to execute your test case on Windows, whatever test case you've written in Mac, you want to execute it in Windows, For that also we require something called as Selenium Grid. Okay, so as I told you, Selenium Grid is used for what? Selenium Grid can be used to distribute your test cases on different machines. Okay, so the example I told you was that if your machine has, if you have many test cases to be executed, let's say 1000 test cases, so then you can, if you have four different machines, then you can distribute, let's take for example, okay, so let's say for example, you have four machines in your office, you take them, okay, then you will, what will you do? You will distribute the test cases, 250 here, 250 here, 250 here, and 250 here. Okay, if you divide the execution of these test cases in different machines, then it will be easier for you, and the execution time will also decrease by 4 times. Okay, so to control this, what will you have? You have some central machine, we call that as hub. Okay, so we have a hub, we have central machine. Now these machines where the test case execution is going to take place, these are called as nodes. Okay, so this is node, this is node, this is node, this is node. Now, it is not necessary that all the nodes must have the same operating system. The first node might be having Mac. The second node might be running on Windows or Windows 10. The third might be running on Windows 7, and fourth might be running on Windows 8.1. Okay. So if you have to execute your test cases in different environment, what you need to do, you need to set up this grid environment, grid setup. There you can say, I want to execute my test case in Windows 10, then it will be executed here. You can say, I want to execute my test case in Windows 7, then it will be executed here. If you want to execute it in Windows 8.1, you can execute it here. Okay, so if you want to test your test cases written in Mac, you have to set up this kind of environment. Okay, so Mac will also be connected to this hub. So this can be any normal computer, it can be running on Windows or Mac, it can be anything. Okay, so when your test cases are stored in Mac, you want to execute it in Windows 10. So first this node will send a request to hub will find out where Windows 10 is present. So when it finds that Windows 10 is present here, so the test cases will be executed here. So if you want to execute your test cases of one environment in another environment, for that also you require Selenium Grid. Okay. So is that clear, Sir Anthony? Does that answer your question? No, if for loop, any loop, that thing is not required here, because in Mac you cannot execute your test cases on Windows 10, right? For that you require a separate machine, and when you have to use separate machine, you need grid, right? Okay, so coming back here on this slide, so the first point is that Selenium is a cross-platform tool. We understood that. Now, as I told you, Selenium is a combination of three components: IDE, WebDriver, and Grid. Three components. Out of this, I told you that Selenium WebDriver is the most important one, the prominent one where we'll be working with. This Selenium WebDriver does not have any user interface. Okay, you have to give commands in Selenium WebDriver. Okay, so it doesn't have any buttons to click on. So in Selenium WebDriver, you have to give the commands. When you have to give the commands, you have to use some language. So that language can be Java, C#, Ruby, Python, or Perl. It can be any of these languages using which you're going to give commands to Selenium WebDriver. Okay, so to work with Selenium WebDriver, since there is no user interface, to give the commands, you have to choose one of these languages. So we'll be using either Java or C# or Ruby or Python or Perl. Now, Java is the most famous one. Okay, it has more user base and it has more openings. But sometimes you can see the openings with it can say WebDriver with C#. Okay, so or some organization might say we require a person who can give the commands in WebDriver through Python. They are there, but they are less as compared to the requirement for WebDriver with Java. Okay, so most of the requirements are for this, that we require some person who can give commands to WebDriver in Java. So it will be written as Selenium WebDriver with Java. That is how it will be written. Okay, so that is what we are going to focus on. Initially, before we started our discussion, we had just a small discussion on this Java, that how much Java do we need to learn? Of course, when we have to give commands to Selenium, we have to give the commands in Java. So how much Java do I need to learn? So as I told you, Java is divided into two parts. Java is divided into two parts. One is core Java and one is advanced Java. We don't need to learn advanced Java at all. We just need to learn core Java. Now in core Java, what do I need to learn? In core Java, there are topics like classes. There are topics like classes, objects, methods, constructors. Okay, these are the four topics which I told you that we'll be using in our real-time applications. Okay, so these four topics will be required for working in Selenium. Apart from this, there are other topics which you require for appearing in the interview. You won't be using them on a daily basis, but you require them because those are the topics from where interview questions will be asked. What are those? They are method overloading. They are part of core Java only. The method overloading, inheritance, method overriding, arrays, loops, collections framework, and exception handling. Okay, so these are the topics. These are the topics from where you will be getting the interview questions. The first four topics are the one from where you're going to get uh, the working part. Okay, now in our discussion, of course, to work with Selenium WebDriver, you cannot start working with Selenium WebDriver right away. You need to understand the core Java concepts. So which topics will we be covering in our discussion? Tomorrow, when we connect, we're going to discuss these topics: classes, objects, methods, and constructors, because this is what we are going to use in our day-to-day work. Okay, the questions which are required for interview process, we won't be covering that. As Madhu told you initially, we are not going to focus on the Java concepts. We're going to work on Selenium concepts, and whatever is required for Selenium concept, we'll cover that. We won't be focusing on what is required for interview. For that, there is a separate preparation process we can go through. We can go there. So it is an easier thing. It is not difficult part. But since we have this duration of this course is 20 hours and to finish everything, so we'll be focusing on this thing first, these topics, and then we'll start with Selenium WebDriver. So tomorrow, when we start with our second class, tomorrow's discussion will be based on these topics, these Java topics. So tomorrow we won't be starting with Selenium. We're starting with the Java part because we need to understand Java. Once we understand these things, from the third session, that is from the next Saturday, the coming Saturday, from that we'll start with Selenium WebDriver. So tomorrow's session will be dedicated to the discussion of Java. Okay. So I hope now it answers the question: how much Java do I need to learn? So 4 topics for the real-time working, the actual implementation, 7 topics for appearing in the interview process. Okay, so that is what it means. The second line supports C#, Java, Ruby, Python, and Perl. Now coming to the comparison between Selenium and QTP. Where there's a question here, Vamsi says, can you give us a brief about IDE too, though it is not frequently used? Yes, Vamsi, we'll have a brief about IDE as well. So we have 10 minutes still. We'll have a brief about that also. So this is the last slide. We'll have discussion on that also. Today itself we'll discuss. Okay, so comparison between Selenium and QTP. Selenium is an open source tool, as we already know. QTP, on the other hand, is a commercial tool. You have to buy a license for this, so if you want to use it. Okay, so that is the main reason that Selenium has become more popular as compared to QTP, because the fees for that is a bit on the higher side. Selenium is, of course, completely free. You don't have to pay anything for that. So we're done. Okay, so commercial tool, it requires a lot of money to be put in. An open source tool it is completely free. Nigel says, found under the settings. I'm ready to ask my question. Sure, Nigel, you can ask your question. Go ahead. Still, I cannot hear you because you haven't unmuted yourself. When you unmute yourself, that symbol should turn green. As of now, it is gray. That is what I can see. So that means you haven't unmuted yourself. Okay, so try unmuting that, and when it turns green, you can speak. Okay, so Anthony says, for one-to-one meeting with you, how can I connect? So Anthony, just send an email to Madhu, and Madhu will schedule a session for us. Okay, so that is how we can connect, right? Just shoot an email at info@getsoftwareservices.com and just tell him that you want to connect with me. So whatever doubts or questions you might have, we can discuss there. Okay. So meanwhile, we get a question from Nigel. I'll just discuss other things. Selenium only supports web application. We discussed that in detail, that what is web application. QTP supports both desktop and web applications. QTP can test both desktop and web applications. That is one plus point here, QTP, which has. Selenium is a cross-platform tool. Cross-platform means we already discussed that. On different operating systems, you can use it to test different browsers. QTP, on the other hand, is not a cross-platform tool. It can only be used for Windows operating system. QTP is not available for Mac. Selenium supports many programming languages. We saw that Java, C#, Ruby, Python, Perl. QTP, on the other hand, it only supports VB scripting. Okay, so at some point of time, you can do something called as descriptive programming in QTP. When you want to enhance the functionality, you want to program your own test case, you can do that, but for that you need to use VB scripting. Okay, so Microsoft Visual Basic, that is what you have to use. But Selenium supports many programming languages. QTP just supports one. So that is a brief comparison between Selenium and QTP, just for your introduction. Now, the next thing we will talk about is the softwares. How to install Java, how to install Eclipse. The installation we will talk tomorrow. Today we'll talk about Selenium IDE. Okay, so of course these are all the softwares which you require to install. The installation of Java and Eclipse we'll talk about tomorrow. Today we'll talk about how do we install Selenium IDE, how does it work, the basic thing we'll talk about. Let us see that. So as we discussed, Selenium IDE is a component in the Selenium suite. There are three components in Selenium: IDE, WebDriver, Grid. IDE is one of the components. How do we install that? Let us see. For Selenium installation, IDE installation, what you need to do, you need to go to Selenium's official website. Selenium official website is, okay, Nigel, now I see your mic is green, now you can speak. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so to install Selenium IDE, what you need to do, you need to go to Selenium's official website, that is seleniumhq.org. That is the official Selenium website. And just see, I'm saying website, it is not a web application. So it's a website. You have to go to download. Whatever we require for downloading Selenium, you'll be coming here. And for downloading Selenium IDE, just scroll down And here you have it. It says Selenium IDE is a Chrome and Firefox plugin which records and plays back user interactions with the browser. Now it's a plugin, Chrome and Firefox plugin. Plugin means a software specific for that browser only. Generally what happens is when you download a software, it gets in your entire system. Okay, those software which are specific to a browser, we term them as plugins. Okay, so there is a plugin for Chrome and Firefox. So if you want to work with Firefox, you have to click on this button. If you are using Firefox, you have to click on this link. Before you click here, just it says use this to either create simple scripts or assist in exploratory testing. So on their website itself, Selenium is saying use this to create simple scripts. Okay, very simple scripts, simple click, and moving from one page to the next page. That is what you can do. I'll show you what you can do here, but you cannot create the complex scripts using Selenium IDE. That is just for your starting with Selenium. The actual thing will be doing Selenium using Selenium WebDriver. Now let us see. Since I've opened Chrome, so I'm going to click on to download the latest release. Just click on for Chrome. I'm going to click here. So it will open Google Chrome Store. I've already added that. You will see one button here. Just click on that and it gets added to Chrome. So this is how it is going to look like. This one. Okay, so Selenium IDE. That is how it is going to look like when you click here. So this is the Selenium IDE UI. Now Selenium IDE has a user interface. It is the Selenium WebDriver which doesn't have any user interface. This Selenium IDE is based on the record and playback feature. Just like if you have worked in QTB, you might know what is record and playback feature. I'll show you what is record and playback feature here also. But just in case if you know QTB, so you can relate to it. What is record and playback? So Selenium IDE, we have it here. Now what we can do here, it has different controls. At the top here, you see there's one record option, this red button. When you click here, you can record whatever you're doing on the browser. Okay, so it can record your mouse clicks or keylogs. That is what it is going to record, and all of them will be recorded here under command, target, and value. Just see, let us see that. I'm going to click on run, sorry, start. So it has started recording. That button, that circle turned into a square. So what is it going to record? To record that, we have to minimize this. Now, whatever you do on your browser, that will be recorded. So let us go to Selenium official website. So we went here. Now this should have recorded in this would have been recorded in the IDE tool. I'll click on download. So just see, when I clicked on here, we got command recorded. If I click on support, it says command was recorded. So Selenium IDE is recording that. You click on about. So that is what it can do. It can record your clicks, or if you type something here, that also can be recorded. Let's see what has it recorded. So first of all, I'll stop recording. At the top, just see, it says this is the link where we went, seleniumhq.org. Automatically it came here. We did not have to put here. So this is the link we went there. Then it says command, target, and value. So under command, it is giving us the commands, what we gave the commands that have been recorded. So it says the first is open. What is it going to open? It is going to open this link, seleniumhq.org. When we execute that, it is going to open it. Okay, so target and value are blank. Click at. The other three actions which we took, they were the click actions. So click at is a command. Where did we click? Target is, it says link text is equal to download. We clicked on the download, and value is 3015. So this is the exact coordinates where they were clicked. Okay, so that is what it is specifying. Other actions are also click at, support, and about, and here it is talking about the exact coordinates where they were clicked. Now if I have to execute that, I can click on this run current test, and here we can decide the speed. If you click here, this is the controller. The slider can be brought down to slow or fast depending upon what you want. If you want it to be slow, you want to see what's happening clearly, you can move it to slow. If you don't want to see what's happening, you just keep it fast, so it'll be executed faster. So let's say I just want to keep it here so that you can also see what's happening, because otherwise if you keep it on fast, it will happen very fast. So to see that, what will I do? I'll just click on run and I'll minimize this, so you will see whatever we have recorded here, that will get executed. So I'm going to click on run and I'll minimize it. So you see it opened Selenium page. It clicked on download, and then it clicked on support and about. Okay, so this is what we call as record and playback. First we recorded a script, then it got executed. And see, it got also, all these steps got executed successfully, so they're green in color. So this bar tells us that everything got executed successfully, everything is fine. Okay, so this is record and playback feature, not of much use, but just gives you an idea that what automation looks like. Okay, so we first recorded it, we gave a command that we start executing it. So this is automation, but Selenium WebDriver is completely different. Okay, so this is what Selenium IDE does. If it were that simple, Selenium learning would be also, it will take very less time, but Selenium WebDriver is not that simple. So this is very simple thing. This should give you an idea that what Selenium IDE is, but we don't use it in our real-time projects. So that is it with our today's discussion. We'll wind up. Before we wind up, of course, I'll take your questions now.
Hi, Deep. This is Nijal. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Nijal, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. What the challenge was, I had to rejoin because when I joined the initial or the very first time, I had it default me to mute, so it wasn't allowing me to go in and change it to in the settings.
All right.
Okay. All right. So, there was an interview I had recently went on in regards to asking about my exposure and knowledge of Selenium. And one of the things this particular organization is looking for is to use Selenium in continuous integration. So I just wanted to confirm with you that would require additional plugin tools to be linked. And that's why I was asking you about, because I know it has the capability of testing APIs. It also has the capability of testing, I guess, like from the database side as well, but this would require additional plugins. Is that correct?
Yes. The continuous integration part will be taken care of by something called as Jenkins. We'll be covering that as well. Yes. So we'll be covering that. So we'll see how do you do the integration with Jenkins. So yes, these are separate plugins. We'll be doing that.
Okay. And then my other question was, because I have familiarity and I use QTP, well, actually UFT.
Okay.
And I also tested .NET applications. So I know in your last slide you were saying that it was only available to test VB scripting, but you can also test other types of programming languages with UFT.
Okay, so in UFT, can you write .NET?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm sorry for that. I'll just make a correction for that. Thanks for the correction.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, guys, so any other question? I see one question. Anthony says Selenium PL1 required NCSQL, PL1 required 3, Unix PL1 required for job requirement. So Anthony, I cannot understand that properly. One Selenium PL1 required 2 NCSQL PL1. What is that? I cannot understand that thing. The numerals which you have written. Okay, PL is for proficiency legends. Okay, so proficiency level are they are asking. Proficiency level 1 required to. Can you unmute yourself, Anthony? I mean, I just have problem understanding this thing. Just unmute your mic and just speak. Okay, so meanwhile, I'm getting the question here. Any other question, guys, before we wind up for today?
Hey Dipender, my question is like I'm writing right now we are on Selenium and studying Selenium. So but in the job requirement, like if you want I was going through a little bit job, like job search and everything. So they were asking Selenium as well as SOAP UI. So and how you explained like UI for UI we can test Selenium with that UI, and then for SOAP UI is that business logic, right?
Right.
So my question is like I'm studying right now Selenium, Python. So how again I have to study SOAP UI for if I want to apply the job, or Selenium is only I can like with QTP I can also apply, or I do have to study SOAP UI as well?
It depends what kind of work are they going to assign you. Selenium and SOAP UI are two entirely different things. So either your primary work will be based on Selenium or your primary work will be based on SOAP UI. That you need to confirm with them. If your primary work is concerned to Selenium, then you can apply for that. If they are asking for SOAP UI, that means a little bit of knowledge of SOAP UI is also required. But you
No,
can,
nowadays, yeah, I
Yeah,
nowadays the companies are asking like uh,
multiple.
multiple, even Python, like
Exactly.
yeah, it's just like because I studied, but remember I used to work in Unix, but not that much. I because I have a little bit gap in between.
Mhm,
So now they are asking Java, like if you are applying, they are not only looking for you that you know Selenium, Java, that's all. They are asking you, do you know Python, do you know Java, do you
That's
know
correct.
yeah, so it's
mhm.
like you know, at the
Yeah,
end
I
of the
understand
day,
that.
what is going on? Because we
So,
are studying, yeah, we are studying and we have knowledge, but you know, end of the day in the interview, I got puzzled. Trust me, when they started asking questions, I have two or three bad experiences. Like I got
Mhm,
puzzled, so I need to be clear in my head which way I'm going through now. Even for apply, you cannot apply in one job when you only put Selenium, Java.
mhm,
So that's why my question is like, you know, so you are giving us training Selenium, Java, but again, how we can manage, if you can tell us a little bit how we can manage with multiple you know, little bit language, you have to know a little bit different
mhm.
Python or different. So can you just enlighten on those like just give us a little bit experience how we can. I do understand you are telling we are studying Selenium, it's maybe not relevant, but
Yeah.
it's just because you are experienced I can ask you.
Yeah. See, let me tell you why all this thing is happening. I've seen a couple of resumes which people create in US. So what they do is they put every technology on earth in their resumes. They say, I know this, I know that, even I know, in the technology they'll say, I know how to make cars, I know how to make ice cream, and all that stuff. Whatever they know, they put in their resumes. So what has done is the people expectations have increased in the recruiters' minds as well. So what happens is when you get a job from a recruiter, first there will be some intermediator person, there will be some consultancy who will be calling you based on behalf of the company. Okay, now when you're going to join a company, believe me, you'll be working with you'll be working in one major technology. Okay, you will not be working, and there is no superhuman who can master all these things. But in the interview, when this consultancy is going to ask you, they don't have any idea about what you're going to work with. But they will ask you about this: what is Unix, what is the Python, what is that, what is this, what is that. Okay, so the reason for asking so many things is this: because people put so many things in their resumes. So now consultancies ask so many things in the very first process itself. You will not be working with all of these things first of all. Now you have to get past the interview process. Okay, of course, there will be some consultancy which is going to ask you these questions. You have to get past these. The question about the Python and any other language is that is very easy to handle. The process is just see. Just a moment. See, when I say we're going to start with Java, uh, there is one common uh, platform on which all these languages are based on. Okay, so you might have heard the word object-oriented programming, right? So there is something called as object-oriented programming, which we'll be working with. Actually, when I say we're going to start with Java, we are not going to start with Java. We're going to learn object-oriented programming. When you learn object-oriented programming, the topics which I told you, classes, objects, method, constructor, method overloading, these are the topics of object-oriented programming. These are not the topics of Java. Okay, so these are the topics of object-oriented programming explained through the syntax of Java. Just to give you an idea, uh, there is a concept called as democracy. If I have to explain democracy, I can explain democracy in Hindi, I can explain it in English, I can explain it in Punjabi, or any other language. If you speak, you can use any language, but the concept remains same. Okay, so different languages are just a medium to explain this concept. Okay, Hindi, English are just the languages to explain the concept. Similarly, object-oriented programming is a concept. Java, C Sharp, your Python are just the mediums through which you are explaining these concepts of object-oriented programming. They just use the syntax. So tomorrow's session, after tomorrow's session, the 4 topics which we're going to cover, after we are done with that, those 4 topics, you can say that you know the concepts, object, classes, method, constructor. So you can say you know Java, you know C Sharp, you know Python, Ruby, and Perl. So you can say I know these 5 languages because these 5 languages are based on these concepts only. What they choose is they use different syntax for them. Okay, so when you learn object oriented programming, so you know 90% of all these languages, you know Java, C Sharp, Python, Ruby, Perl. You just need to learn the syntax of that. Okay, so that I can leave on you, because you can just Google it, that what is the corresponding syntax. If I do this thing in Java, what is the equivalent of in Python? If I do this thing in Java, how do we do that in C Sharp? Okay, so that is very easy. That is not a difficult thing. Okay, so you just need to understand the syntax. That is just 10% part. Other thing is, you say you need to know Unix as well. That kind of thing we won't be able to cover in these sessions. For that, Madhu might be able to tell you that what can be done for that, because if we cover those things, of course we can do that. If we cover those things, we won't be able to cover the topics of Selenium. That is why we won't be able to cover that. Okay, if it is related to any language thing, then don't worry about that. Okay, so language thing can be handled, but Unix or database or something we won't be able to cover in these sessions. Okay. Any other questions before we wind up?
Satya, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I got it. Thank you so much,
Oh,
Nigel.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I can relate to what you're saying due to the
Yeah,
fact
cause
that from a
it, yeah.
QA perspective and from QA testing, when they're asking those specific related to technical components, a lot of times you're not just testing one type of application. Depending on the company type, you may be working with different types of technologies within a company. So they may want to know your exposure to Unix, or they may want to know your exposure to testing other type of software depending on what it's been coded in.
Even for, I think, you, even if you want to apply for jobs, like, say,
Yes.
I'm just saying, if you are applying for any bank jobs or something, like, if you put only in your resume that you have QTP or Selenium, you're not gonna get any calls, first of all. And then
Right.
again, when I went to I put it like I last year I did have a couple of interviews. I just didn't crack because I have hands-on experience on QTP, and I do have knowledge, basic knowledge. But when they start asking me, like, they actually gave me a question paper with Java coding, and what gonna be the expected results. And I got first interview, it was bad, and then second interview I went, I just studied SOAP UI. I knew QDB, SOAP UI is not that much, but then again they started asking about environment and everything. I got again little bit, it was even for entry level QA. It's not even for experienced QA. They were looking for entry level QA, and they were asking. So
Yeah.
it was really little bit, I had that experience. So
It
every
was
time
challenging. Yeah.
yeah, every time I study, I know I can do it, but pass the interview is a big challenge for me.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand so many things are asked. Uh, how do you go with that Unix thing and all those things? The basic stuff, of course, Madhu can tell you that how can you go through that. Maybe you may have to Google something, some basic stuff. Of course, not required in too deep. So as I'm telling you, of course, they might say in the requirements that a person with Selenium, SOAP UI, uh, Unix and animation and ice cream making and pizza making, all that stuff is required. But you will be working primarily on one major thing. The other things, of course, might be there. You might be using on and off, but you will be working on some major technology. Okay, so you have to be very well equipped in one technology, like in Selenium. The other things, basic stuff, you can get from Google or something. Madhu can tell you that how are you going to do with that. That is the only thing we can do.
Yeah, anyways, Deep, thank you
Yeah.
so much for answering all questions. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Okay, guys. So, any other question before we wind up for today? No questions? All right. So we'll connect at the same time tomorrow at 11 a.m. EST, and then we'll continue with our discussion. Thank you so much for joining in. See you in the next class. Till then, goodbye, and have a wonderful day ahead. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.